Hello, everybody, and welcome again back to Procrastinator's Pit Stop. I have another amazing guest for you here today, Michelle Davies. For over 27 years, Michelle has empowered individuals of all ages to take ownership of their well being, using clinical techniques to uncover and address the root causes of pain and suffering. Her unique hands on healing approach, widely recommended by professionals across industries, has been described by many as miraculous and enables patients to unlock their inner healing potential on all levels. She has also authored two books, Miracle Worker and Mental Clarity. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, and we're definitely excited to have you here. This is a little teaser for everybody before the show. Normally, we dive into procrastination from a psychological standpoint or a mental standpoint, but today, just as a little bit of a preview, we're actually going to get more into a potentially physical aspect. But before we do, we usually have an icebreaker on the show. And Michelle, your question today was, which historical figure has inspired you the most and why?
So, my answer to that question would be Jesus Christ, because I would aspire to live as Jesus lived his life and to heal as many people as possible without anything for return. And I feel like I work with Jesus when I'm working because I work with the Christ oil. So, some people will term it that, other people will say it's the cerebrospinal fluid. But I like to think about it being the Christ oil. So therefore, when I'm working, it feels like then I'm working with Christ to bring about healing in that person's body, which miracles happen all the time. So it really does feel like that. And believe it or not, I have actually had people call me Jesus at times, which I've laughed at. But then I'm thinking, wow, I mean, that's a huge honor to even be somehow linked with Jesus in that way. So,
Okay, well, I like that. And we're going to dive into more about that in just a moment. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to be where you are today?
okay. Well, I was 13 when I decided to be an osteopath. So I was brought up by a mum that is a healer. So I've been brought up in natural medicine. We didn't go to the doctors. I've got a brother. So my brother and I, we didn't go to the GP. My mum used to do reflexology and healing and using remedies. And at the age of 13, I decided I wanted to do something similar to what my mum was doing because I saw my mum helping people heal. They would come into the house and they would always be really happy, joyful. And so was my mum, very optimistic, uplifting, just really happy. And I thought I'd love a career doing something similar. So there wasn't much choice in natural therapy to choose from. It was either chiropractic or osteopathy because I knew that I didn't want to do something that was mainstream. So I then chose osteopathy, took the right exams, went at GCSE level and then A levels, and then went to university in London when I was 18. I studied to be an osteopath then for 4 years, graduated when I was 22 in 1997. And then I've been working in private practice as an osteopath until 2001. And now I use a different title. So I would say more that I'm a healer in osteopathy as opposed to using the title osteopath.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is so interesting. Especially when you say that you didn't really want to do anything mainstream. Was that the influence of your upbringing as well, or was there a different reason that you didn't want to go through mainstream methods?
I would say through my upbringing, because I had been brought up with the body knowing how to heal itself rather than using medicines to do that. So I believed that the answers were in here and that we could be able to heal ourselves without the use of medicine.
Excellent. And you've had so much success in your life and a lot of things to celebrate. I mean, two books and this practice and this really interesting topic, and you've helped a lot of people. But every journey isn't without a specific set of challenges. What would you say was the biggest challenge you kind of had to overcome?
Oh, that's the biggest challenge I would say is most recently. since 2016. So in 2016, I was forced to remove 75 testimonials from my website by the regulator in order to comply with advertising. I begrudgingly did that, but I knew that it was wrong. Fast forward to 2021, I felt like I had to say something about that. I was not happy to practice any longer with feeling like I'd got duct tape across my lips. So I felt like I was lying to the public, deceiving the public, and I didn't feel as though really I could be helping as many people as I could be if I was truthful. So I took the decision to take a case against my regulator. That ended badly. In one way, it ended badly. In another way, it was the best decision I've ever made. The trial dragged on for 3 years, and probably about 9 hearings as well, tribunal hearings, court hearings. And at the end of it, they struck me off. But it was a decision that I made because I couldn't have 2 authorities that I was answering to. So the authority of God and the authority of my regulator. And I had a decision to make. And I chose to follow God and my faith and my strong belief in God, my creator, and to forgo the title of osteopath. So even though I had not harmed anyone in the 24 years that I was an osteopath, caused no one any harm, I had received no complaints in that period of time, but I was struck off for not ultimately not doing as I was told, which would be to comply with the advertising standards and just to comply really with how they wanted me to practice. And so that's been my biggest challenge, because I really wasn't sure how successful I would be without my title, because my title was everything. And I'd had my title by then 24 years, and then I was attached to it. And I thought really that was me. I'm an osteopath, and people come to see me because I'm an osteopath. So I've worked through that. I've worked over the last 3 years, and also that period of like letting go of the title and practicing now really without a title. But of course, now I've got an incredible freedom that I didn't have before. And I'm actually able to help more people because I can be truthful about what I'm doing. I don't have to hold back. And of course, there's no safety issue because I've always been safe and will always continue to be safe.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's it goes into labels in general. As I'm sure that most of my listeners know now, I tend to go on rants about labels. I try not to talk about them much because I do go on rants about them. But I think it's great that you've overcome that and you're living your truth now, because I mean that's really the only way to move forward in life, is to just live your authentic self and just live your truth, right? Um, just moving back on to procrastination, just a quick forerunner. How would you describe procrastination personally, and how do you approach it?
So procrastination for me would be that I'm not getting things done, or I'm just being slow to get things done, not being able to proceed with something. Personally, I would say that I don't really procrastinate because I've been doing a lot of self-development over the last 20 years or so. Probably 24, 26, 27 years I've been doing work on myself. So I've attended courses and events such as Tony Robbins, walking on hot coals, a Millionaire Mind Intensive, breaking an arrow with my throat. These sorts of things that I've embarked on, which has enabled me then to be very good at taking action. And I'm probably the opposite. I don't really sit and think about something for too long. If anything, I take the action very quickly and then run with it. I'm not very patient when it comes to myself and what I want to achieve. I just want to achieve it, and I want to achieve it yesterday, not tomorrow. So personally, I would say that I don't suffer with the problem of procrastination, but I certainly understand it with the patients that I treat, because most of the patients I treat would have issues with procrastinating.
Mhm. Yeah, just that, and circling back just to the books. I mean, the old, and I don't know if you want to call it a saying, if you want to call it an adage, if you want to call it a joke. They say that when you write a book, it's 98% procrastination and 2% actual writing. You just mentioned you don't procrastinate, but I'm curious, how was that process for you?
Well, for example, the book that I've just published about a month ago, I wrote this book in 10 days, and the actual copy of it was in my hand within 4 weeks. So that's a really good example of not procrastinating. I attended a book boot camp with Raymond Arron, the publisher, and it was amazing because he set tasks to do for those 3 days. And he would literally say, you've got 15 minutes to go away and come up with your book title. That's an example. So I just did as I was told in that space. And I just was able to just get on with it, which is why I've got that copy in my hand 4 weeks later. The first book, where I didn't have any direction and didn't seek direction from anyone, it was published through a publisher, but it was self-published. That actually took 14 months to write it. But even then, when it was 14 months of writing it, I couldn't put it down. I was writing every day, and I was going to bed late, getting up early in the morning because I was really excited by writing, and because I feel like I've got so many things I want to get across to people to help them, that I was very eager to get it published, because I know that if people read my books, they will be relieved from suffering in some way. So even that process, even though it took a longer time, I think that was more because I hadn't got direction. And I kept on writing and I kept on editing and I kept on adding more content and more content. And then that needed to be whistled down a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, and both your books are available on Amazon and some other channels as well.
Yes, the book Mental Clarity is only available on Amazon, and Miracle Worker, that's available on many other shops. And I've got my own website where you can purchase the book. Some people don't like Amazon, so they can purchase it from the book website.
Okay, sounds good. Well, and just for our listeners, want to pick up a copy of these books, we'll leave the links in the show notes so that you'll be able to find them easily as well. Okay, now onto the part where I have to admit I'm a little bit selfish in this part because I really want to dig into this as well. We had a little bit of a preamble, pre-interview almost, speaking about procrastination and its physical causes, and it was very interesting. You mentioned, Michelle, about concussions and how the concussion, even if it was decades ago, it could still be affecting us today.
Yeah, very true. So I see procrastinating as a potential symptom of the brain not being healthy. Because as an osteopath, one of our principles is that the structure governs function and the role of the artery is supreme. So those are two principles that we practice by. So I see procrastinating as the function and the brain as the structure. And so it's just a symptom of something that's not right. So I see it, and also I've presented with these patients with the problems of procrastinating, that they actually have a problem with the health of their brain. And usually this is a retained concussion. So I work a lot with patients with anxiety and depression, suicide ideation, and other mental health illnesses. Every single case of them has presented with concussion. And even a baby can have that feeling of concussion, but it's more because of the pressure that they've been through the birth canal, or that they've had ventouse or forceps. So they've actually had an injury to their head. But procrastinating can actually be just a symptom of a returned birth compression or a birth injury. The same as if you may have had an injury to your head, you may have fallen downstairs as an infant and banged your head. You may have been participating in rugby, in football, heading the ball, boxing. You might have been involved in a fight, but also abuse. So if there's been any trauma to the head, what happens is that it can affect the lymphatic system. And we've got a lymphatic system which is responsible for clearing the waste away from the brain. So it's very usual that the brain creates toxins. That's normal because it is an organ. And the lymphatic system is by nature, it's a system which helps the cerebrospinal fluid flow around the brain and clean up the mess. So clear away the toxins. And if you've had a problem to your head, that's when it affects the lymphatic system. And we get a failure of the lymphatic system to clear the waste from around the brain. So then what happens is the brain is sitting in its own toxicity. And that is then destructive. It's very heavy. It's like a darkness within the body as well. And it's not allowing flow. So you get, it's like a congestive feel. And it affects someone's focus and concentration. And they get brain fog and forgetful. But it can also cause their mood to lower. So they can be very low and depressed. And then they can be suicidal because of the thoughts that they're getting and the voices that they're hearing in their head. And some people will say it's like demonic. And that's what I'm working with. I'm working with the cerebrospinal fluid when I'm working with patients. So whether you're a baby of 2 days old or you're an elderly person, the feeling that I get from applying my hands to that person's head, I can detect concussion because I detect the fluid flow. So there's either flow or there isn't flow. And the flow, I rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. So I can feel the amplitude of movement, the quality of movement, the range of movement. And by that, I can tell how that person is feeling. So I can put my hands on their head and I can tell if they're feeling very low or if they're lacking energy or they're feeling stressed, anxious, or they're in a bad way. Because I'm engaging with that flow of fluid, which is around the brain. And it is amazing to consider that birth could be the reason that that person is procrastinating. And that person would have never considered that their procrastination may be because they were delivered by forceps or 1-2s or a quick delivery, or even cesarean, depending on the reason behind the cesarean and how far that mother got into labor. So a lot of these problems that people face, they're not their fault. They wouldn't have been able to help that. They've been born or they've had an injury to their head and they've played sport when they were younger and they wouldn't necessarily realize that if they were receiving a force to their head, a blow to their head, that it would create a procrastination issue when they're an adult. And they would look at all the reasons maybe why they're suffering and actually never get to the bottom of it. Unless perhaps they see someone like myself that would be able to lay their hands on that person and say, well, actually, you have got concussion. You are suffering with post-concussion syndrome. Then that starts to make sense because when you look up the symptoms of post-concussion, procrastination would be on that list, but it will be among a list of maybe a dozen other symptoms that the patient really does relate to. And it makes them feel like they understand the condition then, that actually there's a deeper root really to it. So unless you get to the root and treat the root, then you don't often get rid of the symptom that the person is suffering with.
Thank you for sharing that. It's definitely very interesting. So just to, I don't know, kind of maybe simplify this, when there's some sort of, I guess, trauma, blunt force or otherwise to the cranium, we're talking about the lymphatic symptoms. So is it sort of like talking about almost like I don't want to say a hose or a tube where this fluid's going through and it gets pinched and then you have to open that to get it to flow again, or am I wrong?
It's much larger than that. It's sort of more of a gross cleaning system. So we've got the lymphatic system, which is in the body, which a lot of people understand and have heard the term the lymphatic system. This is then the glymphatic system. And it runs through the cerebrospinal fluid or the the fluid which is taking the toxins away is the cerebrospinal fluid. And that bathes the entire brain. So all of it.
Okay. And when you're assisting somebody in perhaps I guess increasing that flow
Yeah.
is that okay? And how does that process look usually?
So there doesn't look like there's much going on. The patient can feel the contact with my hands. So my hands would be around the patient's head in a few different positions. I always start at the back of the head. So at the base of the neck, where the neck meets the spine, which is the occiput. I always start there at the back. Then I make my way really to the front. There is movement. So if you were observing me, then you can see that I'm moving. I've got videos on YouTube, my YouTube channel, to demonstrate actually these are real patients I'm treating, just to be able to show what I'm doing with my hands. And it looks like I'm rocking the body, but that's me engaging with the flow. So sometimes what it would look like is that I'm only moving the head to the right, and it keeps on going to the right and it's not going to the left. That's because the blockage is on the left. So then what I'm doing with my hands, I'm feeling that I'm able to then persuade the body, encourage the body to go to the left, because that's where the restriction is. So then the person observing or the person feeling that then starts to see and feel me being able to take the movement then to the opposite side. So their head will be moving very, very slightly. Then I use my hands on the bottom of the back and the pelvis, and I engage with the fluid that way, because the cerebrospinal fluid bathes the brain all the way down the spinal cord and along every nerve. So really, we can apply our hands on any part of the body and be able to feel this flow. But I use it in particular parts of the body, and I just use the body parts really like a handle to actually get at the fluid and feel it and engage with it. Because it could also be that there's a restriction around the back area and the pelvis, and that's also influencing the issue that person has got. It might not just be the head. It could be that they've taken a bang to their back or their pelvis, and they could be very lopsided at their lower half, and that's affecting then the top half, because every single part of us is connected. So something lower down can influence what's going on higher up, and something higher up will influence lower down. So it's important that the whole system is looked at. We don't just look at the head, looking all the way down through the spine, the back, the pelvis.
So yeah, what you're saying there is very interesting to me as well, because you hear about cases of whiplash, right? Where you don't necessarily hit your head, but you hit your back, right? And then they talk about back injuries. Do you think it's really common that those kinds of injuries are picked up on by general practitioners, though, when we're checking to see if there's a breakage or things like that?
No, not at all. Unless you're being seen by someone who does this technique, then it won't be picked up by anyone. So there needs to be a lot more people like myself doing what I'm doing all around the world. There just aren't enough of us. But at the moment, it's like not that many people know about it either. So then it's okay. It's manageable. But if everyone knew the absolute truth, then we would have queues of people down the street of every clinic that was offering this type of treatment. But as you can appreciate, once you've got your title and you maintain your title, it's like you've got tape across your lips and you can't talk freely. So you can't advertise that you treat. So if I had my title now, I wouldn't be able to say I treat concussion. I wouldn't be allowed to do that. I wouldn't be able to say the long list of things that I do and the people that I help. I wouldn't be able to say what I say now. So that's why I'm better off free, because I can help more people. And so the truth, unfortunately, isn't out there, because what we do is a threat to big pharma, because we are able to get people to reduce their medication or come off their medication, because we're enabling the body to do its self-healing and self-repair. So yeah, we work for the health industry, not the sickness industry. Our whole aim is to get people well and not be dependent upon medication and drugs.
And as you mentioned, that you are in short supply. So how would somebody say who's listening to the show, if they wanted to maybe figure out if that's what it is and maybe they don't have access to somebody like yourself, is there anything they could do by telling their doctor to do some sort of a test that might illuminate that? Or no, there's not really any kind of test that would be able to show it?
Fortunately, no. And the terrible thing is that they only know about these problems once the person has passed away and donated their brain. So there is not a test for what we do. There isn't a test that you can have really, or a scan. I mean, there's not an X-ray or a scan that you can have. It doesn't show the flow of the cerebrospinal fluid. So it's looking for someone who does cranial sacral therapy or cranial sacral osteopathy, someone who's using that every day with every patient, that's been working in that way for some time. That's what I would suggest that the listeners look for. There are things, though, that people can do, which in the book, there are a lot of tips that I've given. And there are 10 chapters in here. Every single chapter has suggestions and advice for what can be done to help heal the brain. So most people know the importance of sleep, but people do need to have a good night's sleep, because when we sleep, that's when the brain heals. That's when the cerebrospinal fluid is working to clean up the toxins from the brain. So preferably sleeping between 10:30 at night and 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. That's the best time to be asleep, and preferably you'd want between 7 and 8 hours. The other thing that's really important is drinking enough water, because we need to be able to detox, and the body needs the water and able to do that. So also sweating, because when you sweat and perspire, you're helping to get rid of the toxins as well. Then you could be eating the right foods to help and reduce the foods that aggravate. So, for example, eating walnuts. You want to have omega-3s in your diet, and you want whole foods and berries, these sorts of foods that you can eat, which then help the body. Whereas sugar and alcohol, these create acidity, which create more toxins. So you'd want to limit how much refined sugar you're having, and alcohol for sure, and caffeine as well. They say that 25% of the caffeine that you've drank in the day is still in your brain 12 hours later. So if you're having coffee, then you'd really want that only first thing in the morning rather than later in the day. Exercise generally as well is very good for brain detoxing, as well as doing brain exercises like learning new skills, brain quizzes, and really taking on anything new is really good for the brain. It helps it. And then the more spiritual side of things, when I was talking earlier about it being called the Christ oil, that's then the spiritual side of the work that I do, which people consult me also for that, because they want to feel like they've got a better connection with their creator. We can honor the Christ oil. So if we think about the cerebrospinal fluid being spiritual, being a sacred secretion, then we can honor that. That's how we help it to flow. And that would be things like loving your neighbor, not being gluttonous, not being unkind, not being lustful, trying to just do acts of kindness every day, living with compassion and love, and not being prideful, not being boastful. So these are the ways that Jesus would have lived. That pure example of living like Jesus. That's us honoring the Christ oil. So we could approach it from a spiritual aspect, and we can also approach it from a physical aspect with the things I mentioned earlier, like with your nutrition, your exercise, your sleep, and your water and your brain exercises. So there are plenty of things that you could do without actually having to seek someone like myself for treatment. The patients usually that come for treatment, very frequently I'm the last resort because they have tried a lot of things. So usually people come to me when they are really desperate because they're trying to seek an answer for the problem. Because you can do a lot to help yourself just by following the daily habits that I've got in my book. But seek help then if you really are struggling and you've tried everything, you've tried all the self-help tips, and you've got good habits, and you're still having a problem procrastinating, or you're still having an issue with your mental ability, then that's when you would seek support. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that information. There's quite a bit to unpack there.
Yeah.
I would like to just go back really quick to the sleep, because we all know sleep is very important. But I'm curious, does it? Because I would imagine, this is my reasoning, and again, maybe I'm out there because I haven't studied this, but it would, to me, be more about having your spine sort of decompressed for those 8 hours, and that's kind of what's the important part. So sleeping 8 hours in like a hammock isn't the same as sleeping 8 hours on the side of a bed, isn't the same as sleeping 8 hours in a chair. Is that
So yes, I would say that side sleeping is the best. Apparently that's when you're sleeping on your side, it's the best position that your body is in for your brain detoxing. But I think generally though, just by being asleep, by your body actually switching off from all of the activities, when you're actually asleep in whatever position you're in, your brain will be detoxing. But if you want to help it further, then you would sleep on your side. But a lot of times people sleep isn't good sleep. They wake up tired. They know that they've not slept well, even though they've been in bed and they may have slept 7 or 8 hours, they still wake up exhausted. And you know that that person isn't getting the quality of sleep that they should be getting. And that's, I mean, the best thing to do at all really is to address sleep and seeking support for sleep. So I think that's the most important action that people can take, is to address their sleep habits, create a good sleep habit, and seek support on that if you're not able to get a good night's sleep, because it's detrimental if you don't sleep. We know that one of the factors for dementia and for cognitive decline is that the person doesn't sleep well enough and for long enough. This is also one of the reasons for having concussion treated, because we know then as well that if a concussion isn't treated, the likelihood is that it ends up with mental decline, with cognitive dysfunction, and the worst part of that then is dementia. So it is really important, and this show that you're doing about procrastination, there is such a root to it, which does need to be looked at and addressed as much as possible, because to me it's a symptom, it's a sign. It's like the amber light on the dashboard of your car. You know you've got to take it to the garage to get it checked. It's like if you're procrastinating and it really is an issue, that is a sign to address the cause of the procrastinating.
very true? Although I think most of us can relate to that little light coming on. It's just like, I'll just stick some tape over it. It's okay. But but in all seriousness, you mentioned some things there too. Sliding a little bit into the nutrition side of things, we're talking alcohol, we're talking maybe other substances, maybe sleep aids. So I know myself and some, when we were younger, we often joke about, sleeping and blacking out is kind of the same thing, but we know it's not. So most of the brain repair actually happens in is it the deepest cycle, the rapid eye movement cycle, or is it a different cycle that it occurs?
So I would say it's in the deeper cycle, but it's important the body goes through all of the cycles of sleep, isn't it? We have to spend so much time in each part, which is why then you need to have that 6 to 7 to 8 hours that you are asleep, so that you have that opportunity to go into that part of the sleep cycle and stay there for the amount of time that you're meant to be in it.
Correct, right. So we don't really want to be yanked out of or pulled out of that state of sleep by an alarm or by being awakened abruptly or anything like that.
Yeah. So it really means going to bed early enough, doesn't it? a lot of people going to bed at 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, they've already missed a few hours that their body naturally should be asleep at that time. Alcohol is one of the worst things that would wake people up and disturb them because of the sugar within the alcohol. It starts to waken the body up at around 2 a.m. So if you've had alcohol in the evening, it tends to be that the liver starts working at around that sort of time in the morning, and it disturbs the person's sleep. But again, they wouldn't have thought of that. They've just had a glass of wine with dinner, a couple of glasses of wine, but actually that can lead to disturbed sleep, which is affecting their ability to go into a deep sleep. So being mindful of alcohol, it's actually better to have a drink maybe at lunchtime than it is in the evening, because by then it would be out of the system.
Right. And just to slide back a little bit now to the exercise part, to the body positioning part, there's lots of work in ergonomics as well, where if I'm horrible for this myself, because I'm always slightly bent. I mean, I know I try to. You can see it sometimes when I think about it, I straighten up, but um, just being sort of even slightly slouched over, that can prevent the flow as well. Correct?
You're absolutely right. Yes, your position when you're sitting at your desk, and let's face it, a lot of people now are either on their phone, their laptop, or their computer screen. Even if they haven't got a job in front of a computer, then they're using their laptop or their phone because they might be playing games or using social media, contacting family that way. And it is so important for our energy to be sitting in a certain position. And everything is energy. So part of procrastination could actually just be because the person is sitting in such a slumped position when they're working that it's a big drain on the body. The same as if you've got an ailment in your body that you haven't addressed. So if you've got an arthritic hip or a knee issue, or you've got a problem with your spine, or that you've got headaches, or even you've got elbow pain, or you've got carpal tunnel syndrome, whatever the symptoms are that the person has, and they're sitting, it's a drain on their energy, which then would drain on them, on their attitude and their ability to be able to take action and get things done, because they're feeling their body instead of being able to focus on the task in front of them. So I have a virtual product as well that I'm marketing, which is to help someone set their workstation up properly so that they are sitting in the optimum position for optimum energy and comfort. So it is a free gift. There's a free video that I have, which people can watch, and it shows how to set up your workstation at home in your home office, just using boxes and towels and cushions. So you don't have to actually buy any fancy equipment. But it is really important that your head is up above your shoulders and that your knees are slightly lower than your hips and that your head is up. You're not working on a laptop. Any time on a laptop should be really limited, should not be used for long-term use. So if the person has got a job, like let's say a 9-to-5 job, they should not be working on a laptop. They need to have a separate keyboard and a separate screen. And the screen needs to be at eye level. And then the elbows need to be tucked into the waist so that you've got a right angle between the elbow and the wrist. And your feet are placed on the floor as well. And if you sit better, you will have more energy and you will be more productive at work. So your listeners could access the free video. They could watch that. If there was anybody that wanted me to actually look at their personal circumstances, they can upload up to 4 photographs. And then along with about 30 questions, like a questionnaire, I analyze all of that. So I can analyze the person in their workstation and then create a report that they can go back to their manager with, perhaps because they might need to make some purchases, like a screen raiser, or maybe even a wedge to sit on, or a back support. So there may be things they do need to buy, but they could take the report to the manager, and then the manager should be able to make the purchases. Because it is a duty, it is a health and safety duty that all companies have, is to look after the well-being and the health of their staff. And I don't think a lot of managers do the workplace assessments from home. I think in the office it's good, but I think when people are working from home, I'm not sure that they're being well looked after. So it is an area that needs to improve in companies.
Excellent, excellent. And maybe we'll grab that link to that video, and then we'll actually link to it in the show notes so that our users will go. I know that I'm going to be going and looking at it because I know that personally, yeah, my habits are pretty not great when it comes to the ergonomics. I think I do all of that. I haven't used a desktop since probably, I don't know, 2004. So I've been exclusively on laptops. So yeah, I'm probably in need of an overhaul.
Yes. You'll be the first to watch the video then.
Oh, I can bet that I probably will be. Michelle, it has been so great having you on the show. Where we're coming up to the time to need to wrap up. Is there anything that you feel maybe that I should have asked but didn't ask, or anything that we should have covered that we didn't cover today?
No, I don't think so. I think that's really good. I think we've been able to cover a lot. Yeah. And
Well, I mean, there's just so much too, right?
yeah, I pray that today has been useful for the listeners and they will be able to use something that I've said and be able to feel that they've got more energy and be able to get on with what they need to be doing with them. Maybe even if they read the book, they download the book. There's a link that I could also post as well where you can obtain the PDF free of charge as well to my book.
Okay, excellent. Well, we'll definitely just for all the listeners, we'll be putting that in the show notes for you as well. And what if anybody has a question for you directly, Michelle, is what's the best way for somebody to sort of post that question to you or to get that?
Either through my social media pages. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook. And so I would say one of those messengers there or my email address. So I would say one of those.
Okay, well we'll put all those as well in the show notes so that people will be able to reach out to you easily. And just once again, Michelle, thank you so much for being on the show today. A lot of great information. May have to come back and and to expand on some of these topics. And again, to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in and listening once again. And just remember, if you can't find inspiration or motivation for yourself today, maybe just go out and try to be that motivation and inspiration for someone else. And we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.